Police top brass tomorrow expected to visit the crime-ridden Soshanguve township. This follows a spate of gruesome killings in the area. In a recent incident which prompted the police's response, a 5-year-old child was shot dead during a hijacking incident over the weekend. In another high-profile incident, a well-known DJ and entertainer, Peter Mashata Mabuse, was gunned down after a gig at about, this was 2 weeks ago, leaving residents fearing for their lives. And in the Western Cape, a trial of 6 people, or should I say 4 people rather, charged with human trafficking following the disappearance of the young Jocelyn Smith has resumed in court this week. But we know that that has now been postponed to July. But central question here, what does this tell us about crime levels in our country? And is law enforcement capable of dealing with this decisively to protect these communities? Joining me for this conversation is Professor Jacob Mufugeng. He is a security analyst attached to the University of Tshwane. And we are told that on the virtual platform, Mpho Kwinika is with the policing union, SAPO, and he is joining us as well. To both of you, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Professor Mufugeng, let's start with you. And I have to mention this because this was meant to be a much bigger panel discussion. One individual that we had invited, and in fact, he had agreed to come on. I won't mention his name, but he's an activist in the area of Soshanguve. He was warned by the police to not do this interview because his life could be at risk. This at a time when the community of Soshanguve is saying it's only a matter of time before we take the law into our own hands because the police are simply not quick on their feet. What does that tell you about the state in which that community is in right now?
Good evening, Koli, and good evening to the newsroom viewers. It is indeed a very sad reality. It shows that the Soshanguve community are under siege. And for the police to be able to warn, the activists not to participate in tonight's interview, it just shows that the underworld, the criminals, they are taking an upper hand in terms of instilling fear to the communities of South Africa. It shows that we are really riddled with, the prevalence of witnessing blood, dead bodies, bullets, under, 3 decades after democratic dispensation, where we thought that, the government of the day will be able, according to the NDP, that by 2030, people will be walking in the street during the night, women, without any fear. But come 2024 and we are confronted with, fear, to be able to speak, despite that, the Bill of Rights enshrine, that every person within South Africa has the freedom of speech. So it tells us that indeed we have a long way to go in terms of bringing criminality as well as lawlessness under control. It talks about the leadership of the South African Police Service, the crime intelligence, and the capability of the crime detection to be able to, to be seen to be effective in terms of adhering to the mandate of ensuring that everyone in South Africa, are subjected to freedom as well as security of movement. Yes.
Let's bring into the conversation Mpho Kwinika, who is with the police union, SAPO. We can both look at him. He's on the screen there. Mr. Kwinika, good evening to you, and thank you for joining this conversation. The Eyewitness News, it's a media house. I'm sure you will know about them. They were reporting today that the residents of Soshanguve have told them that they have lost hope in the police. How do you respond to a community that is basically at its wit's end?
Colleague, good evening to you and to all our viewers. Look, I'm from the Independent Policing Union of South Africa, that is IPU. We are very grateful to be hosted by you this evening. The communities of Soshanguve have the right to be upset with the South African Police Service. We have the duty to combat and to prevent crime. And I think we have let them down for not being able to protect the life of that young one. That is an innocent child, a 5-year-old child, who on daily basis, if you follow that story, we have learned that the boy even knew the time when his father will return home. He will run towards him and embrace him for being a father, and the father has to do the same to him as a child. And it is an unfortunate incident that this is happening at the time when the South African Police Service is caught wanting. Not only in Soshanguve, you remember what happened with the communities of Diepsloot, Eldorado Park, Krugersdorp. You can name the communities throughout there who have been yearning for police visibility. I hope that that which has happened now in Soshanguve is going to make the South African Police Service, executive authorities, and management to have a serious introspection and say, do we have a structure that is geared towards, fighting crime in our country? I think that time has come for them to do so.
Yeah. Before I come back to studio, I just want to latch on to what you said. Two critical statements you've made, at least in my view. And the one is that that community has every right to be upset with the police. Second of all, you are saying the police are found wanting in basically bringing in the necessary interventions in that community. You represent members of the South African Police Service. What is the problem? What are they telling you?
I think the challenges the SAPS has are common knowledge. We all know that we don't have manpower. We all know that we do not have resources. We have got Operation Chanela. If you look at Operation Chanela, it has been giving results, I think, last week, and it gives good results. But I think what Operation Chanela is doing is what was supposed to be done by the stations. So all of those resources that are afforded to Operation Chanela should be afforded to the stations. We also need to look at using technology to fight crime. I think the whole world have turned into technology, and the South African Police Service is still, lagging behind, in engaging on technology to fight crime. So these are the issues which we feel strongly as the union that the police management need to start engaging in and make sure that those things are utilized. The communities of Soshanguve, if we had this kind of technology and resources that I'm referring to, you can imagine the power of a drone. When an incident has just been reported, a drone can cover a wide area and be able to track down the vehicle that has been taken from the father while the father was struggling to make sure that this child is saved.
Yeah.
So those are the issues which our members are faced with. Remember the ratio, the universal ratio of police communities, 1:220. South African is 1:383. These are part of the stressors the South African police members are faced with.
Thank you, Mr. Kwinika. We'll come back to you in a moment. Let me bring it back into studio. Professor Mpho, I want to go back to this report of Eyewitness News, and I just want to quote directly from them. And they're saying, the murder of Ditebogo Phalane. This is Ditebogo Phalane Jr. The father is Ditebogo Phalane Sr.
Okay.
That's who the child was running to embrace
the family
as he entered his gate. It's something that this child has done on more than one occasion. Only this time, he could not, nor could his father, tell that he would meet his fate in such a brutal manner. they're saying that his murder has instilled in the community the desire to take matters into their own hands. When you listen to Mr. Kwinika, and he details what the challenges are within the SAPS, I take it that they themselves do not want that kind of state of helplessness as people who should serve and protect the community. So what choice does that community have except to engage in vigilantism then?
Yes, we always, try to encourage that, we should always adhere to law and we should always trust. There's been always an awareness where communities are encouraged to work together with the police. But we find that, the intrusion of, criminal networks, syndicates within law enforcement, has compromised the South African police to a great detail, whereby, should there be any planned operations in terms of, we're talking about, operational channel and even other operations, but you find that the people that are targeted, to be intercepted, they already know the information. So then it brings the community to a state of, paralysis where they realize that, they have law enforcement by name, but this law enforcement, agency cannot be seen to be helping the communities.
Yeah.
Why? Because criminals have infiltrated, the South African Police Service.
Can I pause you there for a moment?
Yes.
Because that's a statement that I'm not hearing for the first time, that criminals have infiltrated the South African Police Service. Yesterday, we had Bandile Masuku, the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Community Safety in Gauteng. This is someone that the police answer to at the legislature. He says that police are working with known gangsters in some of these communities. That's a statement made by someone who's a lawmaker in the Gauteng province. Police report to him. To what end is this going to happen? What is it about police pay, perhaps, that forces them to work with gangsters?
Well, it is the issue of not really police pay, but of greediness. We see now the emergence of materialism in South Africa. We are aware that, the unemployment rate, it ranges around 32%, of which youth is around 40%. But we find people driving around with very big cars, beautiful cars, and they are staying, in the leafy suburbs. And these are the people that are engaged in criminal networks, and then they are now approaching the South African police, some of the South African police members, to provide with intelligence, to provide with weapons, to provide with, where you can see that, to some instances you find vehicles that do not belong to South African Police Service being, marked as if, when, this particular vehicle stops you in a highway, you would think that that is a South African Police Service vehicle. But only to find that, within logistical environment, people are able to bring these vehicles and mark them in a way that, the criminals will be able to go and do crime. So then it talks to the level of trust between the communities as well as the helplessness that they find themselves. Hence now we are talking about vigilantism, even though, we cannot really embrace that kind of concept. But it is because of you go and report, some of these crimes to the police station, but immediately when you leave, the community service center, these people are already in the know that this particular person has reported this kind of incident.
Yeah.
We find that, cases that are supposed to be registered on the crime, system, they are only be written on the case dockets, but they are not captured. So what happens to those cases that have been reported? You find that there is that kind of, chain where even, the admin clerks that are supposed to capture these cases on the system are already, in the line of this criminal network. So we can see that, You know, if something cannot be done, then eventually, few years from now, we will only have South African Police Service on a paper, you know.
Mr. Kwinika, I have to bring it back to you because Professor Mofokeng says we live in the era of materialism. I'm going to ask you a direct question here. Do you have members within your union who live a life or a lifestyle that is suspiciously opulent? And do you ask questions of those people?
Look, actually, there are members whose background is not of a commoner, who are employed in this environment. And I think management knows about this. You know, when you employ a person at entry level, we have to make sure that we look at your background. Remember, this is not a job, it is a calling. Now, during that process, you will be able to pick up some anomalies and be able to deal with them before a person gets into the system. That is at entry level.
Yeah.
There are also a lot of what we call external appointments. These external appointments, we have been saying that they are not done in good faith. There are people who are coming in here, coming from the background of some politicians and some of the high-ranking police officials. Now, when they come in here, like I said, they are coming from a very good background. They drive their parents' cars. Some of them, you are even unable to ask questions because if you dare do that, then you are being targeted. I think the South African Police Service have got a very serious problem which they must really deal with. Not only the issue of the dockets that Professor Mofokeng is talking about. You see, there are dockets whose statements are falsely made, exhibits are being removed and replaced by something else. And management are aware of these things. And we even brought some of these issues to their attention and they're doing absolutely nothing about it.
Can I ask you this?
Yeah.
Can I ask you this? I'm sorry to interrupt you. You're saying that it is known to police management that there are members who do not live like commoners within the South African Police Service. Does the service conduct lifestyle audits?
They do conduct lifestyle audits to a certain rank of police officials. Constables, I've learned recently that they were subjecting some of them, but not all. You know, but if you see a constable driving a Mercedes-Benz, yes, you will want to know why, where do you get all these things? But once you get 2 or 3 answers, which are the same, to say, no, this is my father's car, or you even do the tracking. Remember, for you to know whose car is this one, you have to get into the system. When you get into the system, then you'll find out that the car belongs to the father and the father is a police officer. That police officer who have made that inquiry, the details of that police officers remain on the system.
Sure.
And the next minute you are being followed, targeted, and then you'll find yourself out of the service. These are the serious challenges the South African Police Service members are faced with. So what do? Some of them, they just wake up in the morning and they go to work as if it's business as usual.
Professor Mofokeng, let's come back to you. And let's not lose sight of why we're having this discussion. This is about crime and specific crime in the area of Soshanguve, where carjackings are on the rise. Crime intelligence. You mentioned crime intelligence earlier. Is that not the division of the police that is supposed to detect in order to prevent that crime from occurring? And if I'm right, why are police not cracking it?
You are right. Crime intelligence is supposed to. crack these cases before they can happen. But look at South African Police Service holistically. It's a house that is divided. You find we have challenges of leadership even within crime intelligence. For instance, if a new commissioner is appointed, there will be kind of dislocations, because then he will want to come with the team that he will trust. And then those that are already within the system, they will be told that they have to return certain equipments, vehicles, and all kinds of things. You look at crime intelligence from the early, Commissioner Luli, that how it has been so notorious. And ever since, his era, crime intelligence has been remain, very, in the wrong side of...
It's never recovered.
It has never recovered. So we find crime intelligence that is not supposed to be doing, what it's mandated to do, because of power, struggles, and because of, jobs for pulse. And, crime intelligence was also affected, immediately after 1994, where we see people that were in exile were also introduced within crime intelligence, of which the South African Police Service has been denying that kind of cadre deployment. So crime intelligence has been found wanting. And look at so many incidents that took place in South Africa. Looting of trucks, burning of trucks, and many, the case of July 2021 of unrest, and how all these other things build up to point to the issue that crime intelligence has never been the same. We cannot compare the crime intelligence of, post-1994 to the one that, pre-1994, because of, the apartheid introduced what we are experiencing now in terms of structural violence. But we hoped that by, when we enter into democratic dispensation, then we are talking about professionalism. But what my colleague has indicated, that the lack of leadership as well as decisive actions to be able to put the ducks into a row is something that we become victims of what is happening within the South African Police Service.
Mr. Kwinika, I want to come back to you, and perhaps as a final contribution from yourself. Crime intelligence is very important in detecting crime before it occurs. I'm going to have a conversation in the next half hour about the situation in the Western Cape. What do you know about the head of crime intelligence in the Western Cape? Is he on the job, or might there be some kind of truth to the rumor that is doing the rounds?
Look, the police always resembles the communities it serves. I think Western Cape is known for the gang violence. It's known for drug issues. And for you to have a very good and effective policing, you will need to have an intelligence that is able and capable of infiltrating those kind of gangs. And the public don't understand that being a police officer, for him to get information, he will have to infiltrate that gang and work with it. And when they find out later, and then they say, no, the police officers have been involved in doing crime with the gangs. I think there is some small problems which the crime intelligence needs to deal with. It is the issue of these infiltrations, which they do, because it's regulated in terms of the law. There are these 252As which you have to apply to the judges. You get permission to get involved, and then you work in there normally, just like anyone. And I'm sorry to say this, it is good to say it as well, because I'm not exposing any operations. What I'm trying to say here is that the crime intelligence officer, the communities are not happy about. It might be because he is known for knowing what is happening on the ground. I don't know. We don't know the truth about this. But as the time goes on and the investigation is going on there, we will all know. But crime intelligence they need to apply the law. They need to be in the game, unlike what is happening now. South Africa is in trouble with these international crimes that are taking place throughout the world. And they had found this country to be the most possible way to continue to do these international issues. And tomorrow we'll see terrorism also coming or being planned from these shores if crime intelligence does not come right.
Yeah, that's a very ominous warning. Mr. Kwinika, let's leave the conversation there. He is a leader within the Independent Policing Union of South Africa. It's called IPU for short. Thank you very much for your contributions. And I have to say, I've never, well, maybe not say never, but you've been very honest with the goings-on within the police service. So thank you for that. Thank you for that contribution. Dr. Mofokeng, Professor Mofokeng, Jacob Mofokeng, let me thank you, sir, for your time and your contributions here. Communities are under siege.